It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. If you're not watching over there already, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and leave a like on the videos. Also, subscribe to us wherever you are watching or listening to the show. If you listen to the show on Apple, Spotify, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and also check out the description. We have a ton of links that are down there. I feel like I don't mention that enough now that we don't have Rocket Around the 412 down there anymore, because from July until December, I mentioned it every single episode, and now I feel like I haven't done that enough. So we really only talk about the sponsors for the show whenever we play an ad or Smitty at the very end to wrap up the show. So just check out the description and look at the sponsors. We got some great clothing, some electrical work, and some haircuts. So go check it out.
What a combination. Yeah. And also big shout out to the sponsors for supporting us, because we're going to be doing it again. By the time you guys are watching or listening to this, it won't be the case. And I know that this isn't the Steelers show related to the NFL at all, but assuming you guys are also football fans, we announced today we're going to be doing another draft live show Thursday for sure. Friday we typically do as well, but I just don't want to make that commitment for both of us as we sit here right now. But we'll be here Thursday, night one of the NFL draft. The two of us, some of our friends. There'll be a lot of giveaways, a lot of fun. We'll probably get dressed very stupidly for the occasion. So join us for that right here. If you hit that bell, you'll know exactly when we go live. But this is the Penguins show. A couple trades to talk about. Thank you for the time and Kyle Dubas and not doing this right after we recorded this week. So appreciate you getting these deals done. But the trade deadline is coming up, so time's ticking anyway for him to do business. But Michael Bunting on his way out, as well as absolute Penguins legend. Did we see this one coming? This one hurt, obviously, much more than Michael Bunting for me. Seeing Desharnais go was pretty tough. Vinny Desharnais, who came over as part of the Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor deal, had a cup of coffee here before being traded to the San Jose Sharks for a 2028. Yes, 2028 5th-round pick. I'll be honest, I can't believe he got anything like an asset at all.
Dubas was in his bag on this one. Okay, let me
like
tell
the biggest thing about this is Desharnais set to make $2 million next year. So just clearing that off the book is nice business.
Whenever I saw 2028, I literally checked to see if it was the legit. I mean, now X has the thing where I guess it's a square instead of a circle if they're like a business or an organization on their profile picture, so it's easier to tell. But man, like the speed that it took me to go to the handle and see if there was an R and see if I was looking at Penguins, because I was just like, a 2028 pick in this economy. What, like, Kyle Dubas just out here dealing for just basically getting value out of anything he can at this point, even if we're not going to hear from that pick for 4 years from now,
maybe
or
ever
3 years from now. And that pick is probably his freshman year of high school right now. So it's going to be awesome to see how that plays out. Yeah, a 2020 pick. Like, if you go on to Puckpedia, they only show you 25 through 27. You can't even see that pick on the list of draft picks that the Penguins have.
Wow. All right. Well, added to the bank in terms of the draft capital that Kyle Dubas continues to accumulate. The trade that a lot of people, obviously the more high profile one, and people have some question about, is sending Michael Bunting and a 4th-round pick in 2026 to Nashville for Luke Schenn and Tommy Novak. Luke Schenn, the more well-known commodity, I would say, more well-known. Yeah. I like Tommy Novak, though. I think he's obviously the analytics community. He's kind of a darling within there. 13 goals this year, 22 points for the Nashville Predators, a team that I didn't expect to be as bad as they are. I thought people were way too high on them just because of everything they did in free agency, and I thought that it wouldn't necessarily go well, but this bad didn't necessarily see coming. This is an interesting trade to me for both sides. I'll be interested to see if Kyle Dubas just turns around and flips Luke Schenn or what he does. I would like to see Tommy Novak stay here still as next year on his contract as well. So I'm intrigued by this, but like, what was your take? Because a lot of people seem to be confused about why either team was even making this deal.
I was confused a little bit too, if I'm being completely honest with you. I thought if they were going to be trading Bunting, they would be getting probably draft capital back, and that was it. Because that just seems to be Dubas's shtick right now, is just getting as much future value as he can out of what he has. When I saw that it was Luke Schenn and Tommy Novak for Bunting and a 4th-round pick for next year, I was like, where in the world did this trade come from? Especially because Luke Schenn has another year left. He's 35 years old, a declining defenseman in this league. Tommy Novak, like you mentioned, that is interesting, especially looking at, you mentioned he's an analytics darling, and seeing like what his J Fresh hockey card looked at, 89% WAR, 86% offense, like some really good stuff on that card from J Fresh for Tommy Novak. So that's at least intriguing to me. You get him for 2 more years after this deal at after this year, at $3.5 million. But
it's still 2. I thought it was just 1 after this year. Okay,
yeah, cool. It's still 2 years. At least that's what Puckpedia says at $3.5 million. So I think that you're getting at least some future value in the sense that you get him for multiple years. But the trade was still, like, even now is still a little bit confusing to me, like what this trade is compared to what he had done in his trades. I mean, starting the year to now, it just seems like this one is a little bit different than the rest in terms of like the how do I put that? Like the style of the trade is like the best way I can think to put it. Of like, this is not necessarily trying to get draft picks or just future, I guess, considerations, if you will, like future value out of a pick, because you're just trading them for draft picks. Like, you're getting NHL players right now, one that is considerably older than the other, one that you don't necessarily want on your roster next year, and Luke Schenn is what I would say. But then you get Tommy Novak, which a little bit younger than Michael Bunting, some intriguing stuff there, but it just doesn't fit what Dubas has been doing the past 6 months when it comes to these trades, and it confuses me.
I think, like, maybe we might get answers before, like, we're going to have answers probably before people actually watch or listen to this episode, because by the time it comes out, the trade deadline will have happened and we'll see what happens. But I wouldn't be surprised if they flipped Luke Schenn. I mean, we got Nashville retaining on it a little bit already. Pittsburgh picks up a little bit of that and what he can be acquired for. I think he's a very movable contract when you look at some of the prices. Like, this has been a seller's market. I think they can find a team certainly to give up like a third for Schenn, being how minimal they'll be paying him in terms of the money. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happens. And if that happens, I'll be, well, I said this to somebody who's asking me about how I felt about the trade. At the time that the 4th going back in the deal to Nashville wasn't announced yet. So I was like, I would like to see them move Schenn, but I don't think it's like mandatory. Being that they gave up a draft pick in the deal to get him, I kind of feel like it's like mandatory now that they flip him and recoup some draft capital.
Yeah, I would think so. It's just confusing to me. And I think that is a good possibility. We haven't
or is
seen
it another
Dubas
defenseman going out, and that's why, like, Schenn was brought in to replace another defenseman.
Erik Karlsson. I mean,
I
think it's so unlikely.
Smoke, I think, yeah.
I think it's so unlikely because of you got to find the right partner to do the tango with, and you got to imagine the Penguins are retaining on the rest of that contract. And I just think that there's too many caveats that have to go into an Erik Karlsson trade. Even though, despite like Yoey was talking about, like, the name has been brought up recently in the last few days, but I just don't think that they're going to find the right partner, the right deal to make something like that happen.
I think that's a summer thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
And at the same time, you talk about the retention, and I get it. He's not like a $10 million player, but like, he's not playing bad enough to me where it should be like the case where we have to give up other assets or retain a bunch of money to move on from him. Like, he's been fine. It's just the rest of the team is so bad. I think the best showcase of Erik Karlsson still being a good player was that 4 Nations. Look at how good that he looked on Team Sweden, because he's playing with talented players.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. There's only 2 more years left on his deal at $10 million. Like, if the Penguins were to move on from him, I'd imagine that they'd have to retain some of it. Like, I just don't think that they're going to find a partner if you don't retain anything, unless the trade was just ridiculous in one certain way or another. But like, if the Penguins were to have to like retain a couple $1 million on that deal, I would be fine.
Yeah, I
moving on
mean,
from
like
Erik
make him like an
Karlsson.
$8 million
But like, I
player
don't think
for the
the Penguins should retain half if a team is
No.
trying to do that at all. But yeah, if you
I
make him
mean,
an $8
yeah,
million
the return better
defenseman,
be.
I think that's something that is a real possibility. Yeah, the return, if they're retaining half, has to be ridiculous in terms of what's coming back to the Penguins. I'm curious to see, since we're talking about trade deadline and everything, what happens with Rickard Rakell, because there has been a ton of smoke around him, and he is playing lights out this year. I mean, in what is the first time in what 21 years or 22 years, because I guess in 2004 there wasn't a season. 21 years or 22 years that you can say that the Penguins are probably like openly tanking. I feel like it's hard to say that they're openly tanking. They just suck. They're a bad hockey team, because I think it's hard to say that any team is like actually tanking, but just for how bad they are, it's better for them to be in a position where they lose games than it is to win games. That's the first time in over 20 years that that's happened for the Penguins. And in a season where you're trading off these assets, Rickard Rakell is having his best season in several seasons, best season as a Penguin by far.
Yeah. 6 goals away from his career high.
Yeah,
Going over
I really think that there's a good chance that he gets moved on from. I really do. And I know that this is someone that we said we don't think that this is going to happen, but man, if this is shown that it is a buyer's market right now, and I feel like you're going to find a team that is going to give up a lot for Rickard Rakell, just because of the year that he's having. 53 points, almost 30 goals. He's at 29 goals right now. I feel like if you're going to move on from him now, or forever, I should say, now is the time. We've talked about it in the past where if you wait till the summer to move on from a player like that, it doesn't make any sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense. I feel like his value is highest right now. That it's going to be. And I know it's a player that, I mean, I personally like. I wanted him to come to Pittsburgh. I thought, even despite his down year, I'm still happy that he's a Pittsburgh Penguin right now. But I think it makes so much sense for the Penguins to move on from him if you're going to find somebody that gives you a good deal, because he is playing lights out right now, and I think that you're going to find a buyer.
I have one word to describe Rickard Rakell's 2024-2025 season. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Probably screwed that up because I should have said the word game changer.
That was all. Yeah, I was about to say that's a lot more than one word. I was thinking like before you even said the word game changer, I think we were at like 17 words. So I think that
I have 17 words to describe how I feel about Rickard. But so I can't say I disagree with what you're saying in terms of the way that you would go about it. I just don't think the Penguins are there. And again, this might be freezing cold takes, old takes exposed by this weekend when people are watching or listening to this episode. But just from somebody I've talked to, I would put this in the same bucket as Erik Karlsson, where I think it's a summer thing. For whether we agree or disagree with that being the way they go about it, and also part of it, and we saw them move this player regardless. So I'm not saying that this is going to be like held over them in terms of something they can't do. From just what I've heard, Sidney Crosby basically feels the same way about Rickard Rakell as he did Jake Gensel. So are they going to continue to move guys out that are kind of like quote unquote Sid's guys?
I mean, I hear that, and that's a good point. Like I feel like it's not great to always upset the captain, especially in back-to-back years. But
yeah,
I just think it would be foolish not to capitalize on it. And even if you wait till the summer, maybe you get a decent deal in the summer. I just think that the iron is hot right now, and you need to strike. That's my opinion on it. of where I would stand. And like I said, I like Rickard Rakell. I think he's good, and he's really good with Sid. Mentioning Sid, but
dude, I think if
man.
if the Kings don't end up being the team for Mikko Rantanen, I think that's an awesome like plan B for the Kings is Rickard Rakell, and I'm curious as to what they would cough up.
Yeah,
and it's like familiarity with that. Like I know it was in Anaheim that he played in, not LA, but like I just think it's a good fit in terms of everything for him. Like very familiar with those teams. He'd be playing against those same teams in that division, and obviously like the lifestyle. We've been out on that coast. I don't know. I think that's the team that I would look at if they were going to move him.
Yeah, and maybe this is a little bit outlandish for me, but like imagine. I mean, you already have 2 this year. Maybe you don't get somebody to give up on this year, but like imagine you can get another first-round pick for Rickard Rakell. Say you get like a 2026. That's back-to-back years of 2 first-round picks. Like that's enticing. That's something that I wouldn't.
You're saying you think that's not. You don't think that's possible? Like what would happen? Like what is the return that you would think for Rickard Rakell?
No, I think that a first-round pick would happen if you trade him right now. I don't know that you necessarily get one if you wait till summer. Because I feel like summer trades, especially with free agency looming all the time, it's just slightly different than what people are willing to give up in the actual like title hunts that they're on during the season.
Yeah, there's not as much desperation because teams feel like they can fix their raw. But also, like to me, what plays into that is okay. Say Rantanen is going to get traded somewhere that he's willing to sign an extension. Like I think the free agent market is going to dictate that too. So like if Rakell's one of the better players available, whether it be in trade or free agency, that would obviously impact the price. Being maybe on the reverse side now of Phil Kessel trade. Phil Kessel wanted a deal that involved the first round pick going the other way. And of course, there were other assets. I mean, I would be willing, again, we're talking about making the deal now as opposed to in the summer. But like if we had to attach another asset to ensure a better return coming back the other way too, I don't know. I'm curious to see. I don't think it's going to happen. But I talked about this with like the Pedersen, how you attach Drew O'Connor potentially to get a better return. Maybe there's a team looking for multiple forwards. You attach like an Anthony Beuvillier with Rickard Rakell to maximize the return. I don't know. Just let's. I guess we could pivot there now. We could probably do an entire episode making the argument to trade Rickard Rakell right now as opposed to the summer. But who else do we think is going to be on the way out, if anybody, from between now and the trade deadline?
I think that as far as like headliners go, Rickard Rakell is probably where it stops. There's a couple names that could be moved on from. Like I just don't know how much of a market
we need to stockpile those 2028 picks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like there's several players that I think you can move on from. I just don't know that it's actually going to happen. Like Noel Acciari, if you can somehow get a pick for him, I would definitely move on from him. Anthony Beuvillier is the one that I think is if you look at the forward group outside of Rickard Rakell, he's the one that I would say is the most likely and probably easiest to move out of who's left after Rickard Rakell. I don't know what kind of value you necessarily get out of Beuvillier. Maybe it's like a 2026 third or
that's the thing. I think 2020, if it was like this summer, probably like a fifth. If you do it next summer or next year's draft, probably a fourth, following your third. So like, and we've seen Kyle prioritize the round as opposed to the year. So like, it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being like the 2027 third that Beuvillier goes for.
Yeah, and I'd be fine with that. I mean, we talked about it. This is the first time in a long time where you're pretty much in the spot of fire sale for the Penguins. It doesn't matter if you're winning or losing games. And I think that something that is evident of that, despite Blomqvist's poor play since coming back up in his second stint in the NHL, is Tristan Jarry also called back up. And so I don't necessarily think that is despite coming back up because you were sending down a struggling goalie. I don't necessarily think that you're getting a bump in play that much either way. I think the Penguins, they're focused on their draft pick this year. They're focused on losing. And as much as it is openly hard to get players to tank, the Penguins are a bad team and they're going to find a way to play poorly. And if that includes trading away these players, I think it makes a ton of sense. So yeah, Anthony Beuvillier is the one to me that I would say despite not hearing anything, and as of recording this, we are like less than 24 hours away from the trade deadline. I would say that he is the most likely forward outside of Rakell to be moved on from. And I guess the easiest forward to be moved on from. He's a UFA after this year. He's on a cheap contract, and he's only 27 years old right now. And that's a lot easier to swallow if you're a team trading for him than a guy like the one I just mentioned, Noel Acciari, who is 33 years old, has next year on his contract at a more expensive rate than what Beuvillier is. So those are really the only forwards I'm looking at. Defensemen, you mentioned Luke Schenn possibly being moved out again. I think that there's a possibility that could happen as well, mainly just because I'm still so confused by it. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me still about the trade. And if it was like a trade for a trade to set up something else, then I guess that makes sense. But really, outside of that, that's where I'd stop for the defense.
Well, what about Matt Grzelcyk? He's got 30 points this year, which is like a 46, 47.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I wonder if
you can get really. Here is my thing, and here is my thought process on the Penguins and trades.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get any decent value out of that player? If the answer is yes, and the name is not Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, or Chris Letang, trade him. I do not care. That's how I'm viewing this roster. So if you can get something for Matt Grzelcyk, and you get somebody that's, even if it's 2026, 2027, I don't care. I think that's somebody that, like, if you're excluding Luke Schenn, who's just got here, that's probably the only one that I'd say is realistic out of the defensemen. As much as I'd say Erik Karlsson, I'd be willing to trade, I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and for multiple reasons, for multiple performances, from multiple players, I feel like Alex Nedeljkovic trade's kind of out the window. I would have liked it, even with his poor performance, I think it would have been possible to move. But because of Blomqvist playing so poorly and having to go back down, and I don't think they want to bring him right back up to the NHL. Unless you're bringing in some dude just to like get games,
and they're not going to bring up Sergei Marashov. I can guarantee.
No, yeah,
that.
I'm saying like outside the organization, like just pick up somebody off the street that's a free agent right now just to play games for them. I don't see a Nedeljkovic trade happening now, unfortunately, either.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I wouldn't consider any of the goaltenders on the trade market. It's a shame the struggle that the Penguins had whenever Joel Blomqvist came up after Jari got sent down on waivers, because you and I talked about when that happened, how we thought that Joel Blomqvist would turn into the Penguins' #1 goalie, look good in net, and you could have net as a solid backup, and they just both plummeted. And I got to be honest with you, I don't really mind that they both plummeted as far as a team perspective, because you're helping with that pick chance and the pick odds, but from a player development perspective, that hurts Joel Blomqvist, I'm sure. So, like, him being sent down to the AHL and bringing Tristan Jarry, to me, that's a good thing for Joel Blomqvist. Go figure it out in the AHL. Like, figure out what went wrong at the NHL and correct it when you're down in Wilkes-Barre right now. Because I still think that he has a future on this team, and that he, even in 2025, like, he could walk in and be one of the 2 goaltenders on the opening NHL roster next season. So go figure it out. Go better yourself. I still think he has a future here. Nedeljkovic, it is a shame how bad he did end up playing, and is still playing realistically. It's something that I think could have happened, and we talked about even preseason. I think we even mentioned it, that you could see one of the goalies moved on from, and the realistic option was Alex Nedeljkovic. Now I don't see it happening because of what you just mentioned. The Penguins goalie situation, having to have him in the NHL because you'd have to replace him somewhere, and then his poor play, that doesn't necessarily leave a lot to be desired, but it still could have been tradable. It's just the Penguins are not in a position to be able to make that move. So realistically, like, looking at it, no goaltenders are going to be moved by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Maybe one defenseman gets moved on from. Like, if they trade Luke Schenn and Matt Grzelcyk, I would be very surprised. So I would say, like, maybe one gets moved on from, and then there's a few forwards that could be moved on from that I would move on from. But realistically, I only think that maybe one happens. Like, I think that most of the Penguins trades are done. as far as like the big ones go. The one that could still be a shocker that could happen is Rickard Rakell. Like I mentioned, if that doesn't happen during the summer and they just get a deal that they can't say no to, that could be moved on from. But realistically, if I'm picking one guy that I think is not going to be on the Penguins come this weekend that is on the Penguins right now, is Anthony Beuvillier. Talked about him all season as a trade chip, cheering for him all season as a trade chip. Every single time that he would score, I'd text you with the chart going up, that the trade value is going up, and I'm sticking to it. Even though there hasn't been a ton of smoke about him, I'm sticking to it. I think that's somebody that's going to be moved on from.
Yeah, I'd say Rakell much more likely than Karlsson. Karlsson, I don't see happening at all. Like, I think Rakell's possible, but not likely. Beuvillier, I would say, is likely. Grzelcyk, more. I'll also put him in possible, but like more possible than Rakell. Schenn, I would say, closer to likely. And those are really the five names to talk about, in my opinion. Like, again, maybe they trade somebody that we're not thinking of that we're really like doesn't matter, but that's all I see. And honestly, some of those names that are lower down, they're like Noel Achari, whatever. If they can get an asset for him, great. Because right now, he ain't making the cut. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. I'm just so intrigued. I always love the trade deadline, regardless of obviously it's better to be on the buyer's side, but it's just so fun to turn on, the free agents, or not free agent frenzy, the whatever they call it, trade.
You like turning on the free agents?
No, the free agency frenzy that they do on July 1st. They do. It's the same type of show during the trade deadline, but I can't think of what the name is for it.
I don't know.
What do they call it? I don't think Frenzy's in the name because it doesn't fit as well saying free agents frenzy.
Who do they show it on?
Like TSN or like ESPN has their own thing as well, but I prefer TSN's coverage of it.
Trade Center?
Yeah. Okay. That's it. So yeah, it's just like basically from the start of the day all the way up until the trade deadline time, just ongoing coverage, and they'll break the trades on there and talk about them and stuff like that. So that's what I have on my TV tomorrow during work.
Yeah, I remember I don't really do it as much anymore, mainly because social media is different. So you have For You pages that are kind of designed for stuff that you could see, and plus I follow enough people where it gets retweeted anyway. But I remember back in the day, I'd always Bob McKenzie, Pierre LeBrun, Elliot Friedman, everybody, Kevin Weeks, everybody I'd follow for a couple days and turn on notifications.
Oh yeah.
And that was the only time I'd ever turn on notifications for Twitter, and it's the only time I'd follow those guys was on July 1st to probably July 4th or 5th, and then whenever the trade deadline was.
Yeah, same. Then I unfollow immediately after.
Yeah.
But anyways, good stuff. We'll see how things shake out. Again, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, you guys will have answers to before you even watch or listen to this. So a lot of this might just seem like we're idiots. But
yeah, didn't really talk about the play of the Penguins much this week, but let's be honest, they're just doing what they need to do and keep losing some of these games.
We can talk about that next week, along with whatever they actually have done at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. It's genuinely weird to talk about how good it is that this team is losing games. It's really the only time we've realistically talked about that and been serious about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's odd time. Let us know in the comments how you feel about it. Be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell. Look at the description of the podcast, whether you're watching here on YouTube or listening somewhere else. You'll see the links to all of our sponsors. We already talked about, obviously, Game Changers. We talked about Teach Barbershop. Right above Tyler right now, the logo for Marcello Electric, our friend Brandon Marcello, a.k.a. Boots, his electrical company. Beaver, Allegheny, Lawrence, Butler County, wherever you are, he can help you out. Residential, commercial, service calls, schedule service, contact him, 724-614-0611. Again, 724-614-0611. But the Facebook link in the description of the show, you will be able to go directly to his Facebook page. Leave him a like while you're there as well. But his phone number, email there as well to be able to contact him. Shout out to Boots, Marcello Electric. Hit him up for any of your needs. Everything custom designs down there as well. Our friend Haley Wagner, small business, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, our logo, your logo, whatever you want on some merch. Get at her. Takes you right to her Facebook page. Message her over there. As far as I know, that's the only way that she's operating right now. So be sure to go over there. And then our shorts through DC4L Customs, black, gray, white, whatever color you want between those three, you can go check them out with our logo on them. I think that they are, if I'm not mistaken, the logo is actually on both sides. I think it's on the front on the left side and the back on the right side, which is pretty interesting, but I'm all for it.
Yeah. What's the NC? Any idea?
I want to say 7. I wish they were 5.
Of course you do. You want to show off your thigh tattoos.
Mm-hmm. It's the only reason I started wearing shorter shorts.
6.5.
Oh, wow. All right. So, okay.
But so on the right thigh, it's got the logo that's on my head right now, the square logo.
Yeah.
And then on it looks like the left hip. It looks more like on the hip than the actual back. It's got our circle logo.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Go did some of our shorts. Not that it's necessarily short season right now, but we're starting to transition. We had a couple 60-degree days here in Western PA this week. So you never know when you're going to get hit with one of those days where you can bust out the shorts.
There you go.
So go grab them, keep them in your closet until you get a 60-degree day. Or if you're like Tyler, you can wear them when it's like 15 anyway. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. As we said, if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Hit us up on all the socials at Around the 412. And that's it for Smitty. For Tyler, this has been the Around the 412 Penguin Show. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.